All right, then welcome everybody to today's webinar, Mexico, the greatest profiteer from the nearshoring boom. A special welcome, of course, to our keynote speakers and my dear colleague, Mario Schäfer. My name is Tobias Kerkhoff, and together with my colleagues and with my colleague and founder of Wannabe International Business, Mario Schäfer, and of course, our two keynote speakers, I'm going to host the event. Joining us on today's webinar are María Castañeda, Vice President at MexWorld Consulting Group, and Enrique Duarte, Founder and CEO of EDMX Consulting. Great to have you both with us. Both have supported successfully numerous international companies during the process of soft landing in Mexico by giving advice on legal, tax, or strategic topics. They are going to shed light on selected regions and industries within their home country and also specific investment projects and opportunities from their practice and perspective. In general, this webinar takes 1 hour and we split it up in 4 chapters. I'm going to start with a short introduction and then hand over to Maria and Enrique. And at the end, we will close with a Q&A session answering your questions. Before we start, I'd like to mention 2 more aspects. First, due to our time limitation, please let the keynote speakers finish their talk. Feel free to take notes in the meantime and ask your questions at the end during the Q&A session. Second, this webinar is not a publicity event. The idea is sharing relevant insights and information with you. From our own network, we know that more and more companies are considering Mexico as an interesting target market for their business, but it's still a long way to go to take this decision for a market entry and of course for the implementation, especially in such a diverse country like Mexico. All right, then let's get started. Why did we choose this title? First of all, in my opinion, over the last years, nearshoring has become a buzzword. I guess most of you are familiar with the term. For the others, nearshoring is connected to the transfer of certain business activities or operations to another country that is located nearby. In other words, or let me give you an example, if you shift your production plant from Europe to the US, we're not talking about nearshoring. This is called offshoring. A classic example is if a US company like Ford or Apple decides to build a new production plant or shift a production plant to Mexico. And of course, Mexico hasn't a monopoly on nearshoring. For instance, in Europe, Poland is also a profiteer from the nearshoring boom, attracting a lot of FDI, for instance, from Germany. Talking about FDI, in the last year, Mexico achieved its all-time best results in terms of FDI, with more than 36 billion US dollars. Why that? The central explanation for this impressive number is related to US geopolitical tensions with China. As you might know, US government has already raised or is going to raise tariffs on US imports from China. For instance, for electric vehicles, clean energy solutions, or raw materials, in order to protect the national industry. How do Chinese companies react? They set up a business in Mexico so that they can avoid these new tariffs. Mexico can also count on many free trade agreements, not only the USMCA as the successor of NAFTA. On the whole, we are talking about 13 free trade agreements with 50 countries, also with the European Union. And another explanation for the ongoing nearshoring boom is that the country has a large, diverse economy. Just think of the industries of agricultural industry, mining, tourism, or automotive, just to name a few, in combination with high-skilled and affordable workforce. Mexico is ranked as the 2nd largest economy in Latin America, behind Brazil, and number 12 worldwide with a GDP of 1.8 billion US dollars. And another trend, which is caused also by the nearshoring boom, is the strong local currency. In fact, the Mexican peso has appreciated worldwide the most since 2019 against the US dollar, even more than the Swiss franc. So we are talking about a country with more than 130 million inhabitants, 31 federal states, plus the capital city area. And moreover, Mexico is also a member of the OECD and the G20. As you can see, the country has a lot to offer to trade partners. Right now, the most important trade partners are the US, followed by China and Spain, amongst others. And this week, more precisely this Sunday, June 2nd, the country will hold its general elections with almost 98 million voters picking a new president, 500 members of the Chambers of Deputies, and 128 members of the Senate of the Republic. But it's not only a presidential election, but also 31 out of 32 federal states are going to vote for a new local parliament. Leader in the polls is the candidate from the political party Morena of the current president Andrés Manuel López Obrador, Claudia Sheinbaum, former head of government in Mexico City, and followed by another woman, Xochitl Galvez, current senator and the Conservative Party of the PAN. And the third one is Jorge Álvarez Maínez. So this Sunday, Mexico will most likely get the first female president in its history. And now I'd like to pass the word to the first keynote speaker, Maria. She will give you more detailed information about the regions of Mexico City, Jalisco, and Veracruz.
Thank you very much, Tobias, and it's nice to be with all of you. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to share my presentation. So as Tobias mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Mexico City, Jalisco, and Veracruz, because they are important states here in Mexico that in the last year have been receiving a lot of FDI, and nearshoring is increasing a lot in these regions. Okay, so last year, in this slide, we have the top 5 of states that received the most amount of investments. So we can notice that Mexico City is the principal receiver of this kind of investment, and Jalisco is the third one. In this other slide, we have the top 10 of the receivers of the investment this year, first quarter. And we can notice that Mexico City is still the number 1, and Jalisco is in number 9, but a new state it's appearing here. It is Veracruz. So I'm going to tell you why these 3 states I think are key to explode nearshoring. In fact, here in this map, we can see what kind of industries are receiving more investment. Yes, and now I'm going to talk a little bit more about Mexico City and why it's important. Okay, as you know, Mexico City is the capital of our country. Its population, it's more than 9 million people. It's the second populated state here in Mexico. And it's important to mention that around Mexico City, the metropolitan area is considered one of the most important in the country, because the people who are living around the city. So 21 million people are in this area. So the market is very important, and many people it's working here. Nevertheless, Mexico City surface or their area, it's small, but the contribution to the GDP, to the national GDP, it's very important. It's around 22%, and it's the first one in the country. So in this year, many businesses has been established, and by now we have almost 500,000 of new businesses in total. So it's the second one in the country. The first one is Estado de Mexico, but we are not focused in the environment, in it by now. So I think it's important to mention some of the strengths and opportunities that Mexico City has, and why it's considered a very good place to investment and to exploit nearshoring. The competitiveness, it's excellent, so it's one of the main strengths Mexico City has. Talking about the educational level offer, it's high, so people that coming here to establish their companies, well, if they are looking for a good education, we can have it, or they can have it. Talking about connectivity, it's the best. From Mexico City, you can go everywhere here in Mexico and almost everywhere in the rest of the world. Real estate services are very, very good. The offices are first level resources, and it's very special to mention the people or the talent who work there are bilingual, so it's a very important for foreign enterprises that want to stay here. And talking about the labor force, it's very skilled, and it's almost one of the best strengths that Mexico City has. Talking about the improvement areas that Mexico City has, well, services and infrastructure are very important. They have to be renewal and they have to be improved. So public transport, for example, it's now a problem. It's so important to promote also green energies, because the electricity has been a problem, and the water also. So it's important to introduce more green energies and other aspects that improve that problems. Talking about security and organized crime, Mexico City has a low level of violence and crime, but it's important that the government makes strength plans to prevent the increasing of this kind of violence and crimes. And well, talking a little bit more about nearshoring, it's very important since many years ago, large corporations have been locating their headquarters here in Mexico City. Also, their manufacturing operations are developed in other states because the importance of Mexico City. So, in last quarter this year, the occupancy increased almost 50%, previous the last quarter of 2023. Yes. The capacity or the offer of offices class A and class A plus, it's very, very large, around 8 million of square meters. The corridors more important here in Mexico are Insurgentes, Lomas Palmas, Reforma Centro, and Polanco. These corridors have offices class A and class A plus, and other kinds of offices too, but main large corporations are established in these corridors. It's important to notice too that many of the buildings of these offices have the LEED certification. And it's important to notice that, for example, here in Mexico City, the number of buildings that have this certification are the same number of buildings in Chicago City that also have this certification. So we can consider that the buildings and the office here in Mexico City are very, very high level. So industrial real estate has been increasing also here in Mexico City, especially in the north part of the city. A place named Vallejo has, from many years ago, industrial real estate, but by now it's increasing. And many industrial parks have been built in late years. And the touristic real estate is also increasing too, because of the nearshoring. Okay, so we can say Mexico City has become the nearshoring business district for Latin America. Okay, talking about the other state, very important state also, is Jalisco. Its population is a little bit more than 8 million, is the third place, talking about population. Their capital is Guadalajara, and the population of Guadalajara is very important too, around or more than 1 million. All the state land area is 78,000 square kilometers, and it's important to notice the contribution to the GDP national. It's about 7.4. It's the fourth state that contribute with their GDP. Okay, exports are very important too. And I mentioned here some of the products that are imported from Jalisco. It's important to consider this because they are attracting nearshoring. Companies or manufacturing are establishing here in this state because they produce and they are going to export the products. Okay, computer and electronics is the number one. We also have transportation equipment, beverage, plastics, and food. Some of the strengths are the importance of the hub, the tech hubs, or the tech cluster that is established here in this zone. The competitiveness, it's also very, very high. The labor force, it's very, very skilled. And some of the important decisions that this state have taken, it's about the innovation. So it's in their universities and all the training the people is having or are having, it's focused to innovation. Another strength is very important triple axis alliance between government, universities, and enterprises, especially to focus in innovation. Well, but it has improvement areas also, the electrical infrastructure, the industrial real estate. It's not enough. It has to be developed more. And the labor force, also it's very, very skilled. There are not enough to cover all the offer or the demands of the different manufacturers. In the case of Jalisco, the security it's very important because the level of crime and violence has been increased in last year, so it's very important to establish strategies to decrease this problem. And talking about nearshoring, more than 700 of enterprises have been established here. It's considered as a center of innovation. And some of the companies that are established there in Jalisco, you can see are some of the top 10 tech industries, tech companies in the world. And in last years, medical devices sector has been developing a lot. So right now, Jalisco has been developing very important companies or manufacturing related to medical devices sector. And touristic real estate, it's also been increasing, especially in Puerto Vallarta city, that it's in the beach. Food industry, it's also increasing. Beverage industry, you all know about tequila and mezcal. But in my personal case, we have been advising a company, a Chinese company that has established here last year in Jalisco, and they are preparing to manufacture or produce pets food, and all the production is considered to be exported to the USA. So it's a typical case of nearshoring. And I would like to talk about Veracruz also, because it's a very important state here in Mexico. It's the fourth state more populated. Its capital is Jalapa, but the economical city, or the main important city, is Veracruz, because it's a port. And here in the map, you can see that all state is in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's very important, the trade between Veracruz and other parts of the world, for example, the North America and Europe. And before, the GDP, national contribution, it's very important too. It's the fifth state that contributes to this. Also, the number of business that had been established is very important. And their exports are not very important by now, but because of nearshoring, and we are also to see it in a few minutes, it's going to be very important. Okay. Some of the strengths, it's the strategical location. This is important because it has become a connection point between markets in North America, Europe, and Asia specifically because of the development of the Istmo of Tehuantepec interoceanic corridor. Next expositor, Enrique, he's going to talk a little bit more about this very important project. And Veracruz also has skilled labor, but it has also some improvement areas. The competitiveness is good, but it can be excellent. So it's very important to develop it. It's also important to renew or modernize the ports and the transport infrastructure. And it also has problems about or related to the security, the violence at the crime. So it's very important to establish also security strategies in this state. Okay, and in last year, Veracruz has been considered that sustainable and investment axis for the development of the south and southeast of Mexico. That's why so many projects related to improve infrastructure are developing in this zone. Okay, and investments in this year, in last years, had been related to chemical, petrochemical, and metallurgical industries mainly. A case important related to metallurgical has been the investment that Tenaris Tamsa from USA has done in last years. This investment is to produce pipes and tubes to export to the USA and other parts of the world. Other important investment has been PC Energy from Canada related to natural gas, also to satisfy internal demand, but also to export. And recently, Constellation Brands, the brewery from USA, it's building a big plant to produce alcoholic beverage to export. Most of the production will be exported to the USA. Okay. And other potential industries that are interested in this zone, in this state, are pharmaceutical, automotive, other food and beverage, and agro-industrial also. So we can notice that the increasing of investment in this zone, in this state, could be very, very important to develop all the south and southeast area here in Mexico. So by now, thank you very much for your attention. So if you have any question at the end of the presentation, well, we can answer all your concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. And we stay for a moment in Veracruz, since Enrique wants to present us an infrastructure project located in this federal state. Enrique, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tobias. Thank you, Mario. Very grateful with the universe to be sharing this information today. Thank you, Maria, also for the information that you just shared. Was very interesting. Continuing with that region, there's a very interesting project called the Corredor Interoceánico del Istmo de Tehuantepec. Might sound a little hard to say it, but we can use the short term, which is CIT or CIIT. The CIT is basically an infrastructure project that is the main objective is to connect the Pacific with the Atlantic. It's mainly developing 10 important hubs around all the region. The Istmo de Tehuantepec is the shortest piece of land that connects both seas. So it's gonna be very interesting. Like Maria said, Veracruz is a very interesting area in terms of ports and in terms of exporting goods to other countries, and also now with this corridor, which is gonna have an investment of around 4 billion USD. So it's gonna develop the area in a very good sense. Actually, right now there are already 10 hubs that are in development, including the two ports, the two upgrades of the ports. It's gonna be Salina Cruz and Coatzacoalcos. It's gonna have at least 1,200 kilometers of railways, and also all the highways are being upgraded. The construction started around 2 or 3 years ago. It supposedly was going to be 2.5 billion. Right now it's been 4 billion, the total investment, but was supposed to be finished this year. Maybe before this administration ended. So we'll see how it develops. It's more than 80% done. So maybe this year we can see this region develop. So it's in terms of economic development, it's a very good choice a very good place to invest. There are even some fiscal considerations from the government, and also we're gonna see how the distant hubs develop. It's gonna be very interesting to see how the manufacturing industry or other industries establish in any of these hubs and take advantage of moving their goods in a railway in less than in the same day to ship it by sea to other countries. Obviously, the closeness to the U.S. will also be a very good thing to analyze over there. I'm gonna get to the next slide. Something very interesting is also that's might be a very good alternative to the Panama Canal, since there due to the climate change and all I've heard that there's not enough rain, so there's a 36 reduction in the Panama Canal shipping. So it might be a very good alternative nowadays, but it's not that big. It might not be that big enough. Just for a comparison, I'm saying alternative because the Panama Canal is too big. As a comparison, let's say the CIIT is gonna have six trains that can transit at least two times a day. Each train might transport at least 250 containers. Just one ship from the Panama Canal can transport 5,000 containers. So might not be a or how to say it might be most of an alternative, more of a complement of the Panama Canal rather than a shift of the Panama Canal. Sorry for my cat. Zooming out a little bit more and getting in touch more into the Mexico the Mexico trends and how I see it today, and why it's might be nearshoring booming also. We can see that Mexico has an ideal location. It has a considered borderline with the U.S. Also has a very good regional integration. It has very good connections with the four poles, which is North American, South American, and Europe and Asia. Also, well, there's a very big market with great potential on human capital. Actually, like Tobias said, Mexico has around 130 million inhabitants, and it's the interesting fact over here is that more of the at least half of the population it's not dependent population. So there's a very healthy demographic process in Mexico. Actually, maybe in 10 years, there's not been an unemployment rate under 5% also. It even like in the as a part of the OECD member countries is ranked in the second with the less unemployment rate. Also, it has a very solid and open economy. With a very the commercial strength is getting bigger rather than a place where you can find like low or cheap labor costs that you can take advantage to export to other countries. Mexico as a region might be a very interesting as a market to sell goods. Even we can see it a lot with how that China manufacturing companies are settling in Mexico, and also not only exporting, also taking advantage and selling to Mexico and making Mexico act as a hub to Latin America and to the US. It was, well, 12th imported in the world and the 9th exported in the world. Another very interesting fact is that 89% of the exports are manufactured goods. If we take a look back and see, maybe 50 years ago, at least more than 60% was the exports were oil and gas. So right now we're seeing that the exports being 89% as manufacturing goods, we can see there's a very diversified economy nowadays. Talking a little bit more about other regions, I'm gonna talk about, or at least try to give the most information as possible to the northern part of Mexico. Since the 1980, Mexico has been since the 1980, Mexico, the US and Canada signed the NAFTA agreement, and since there's been a boom and exponential growth, especially in the northern state, the border state with Arizona, with the US. Actually, if we take the economy of the states that are in the borderline, let's say California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. In the US and in Mexico, Baja California, Sonora, Chihuahua, and Coahuila, Nuevo León. We would say that region would be the third economy in the world. So there's a lot of back and forth of goods. Actually, just another interesting fact is that there's for every imported goods from the US made in Mexico, there's a 40% chance that at least one part of that product was made in the US, or that it contains at least one piece made in the US, or it has at least US raw materials. There's a 40% chance rather than a 4% chance if the good was imported from China. So that's another interesting interesting information that give us a context that there's a very big alliance between Mexico and the US, and how the goods are moving back and forth between both countries, or these three countries, let's say, into the US and Canada also. There's actually a new USMCA agreement that just got upgraded. There's also there are very good motives to make this region continue developing. Getting more deeper into Sonora State. Sonora State is in the border with Arizona. Specifically, it's in the northwest from Mexico, and it has around 2.5 million inhabitants. It's a very low density state, but with an exponential development. It's considered, since English is also is widely understood in the state. There's even it's considered that the exporter of engineers. A lot of engineers from Sonora end up working in the US or in other countries, because even public universities for specific engineering careers, they teach, or they have 100% English, their English lessons, or at least the 100% of the classes are in English. So it's something very interesting in Sonora, and how it's been developing. There's also a lot of different industries are developing right now. I'm gonna talk about, well, first of all, just to give a little bit more context. In Sonora, the last year, it had 1.5 billion imports. in goods, and the exports were almost 24 billions, and there was an FDI of 2.71 billion. I mean, it's the numbers might not sound very large, but for a 2.5 million economy, it's something that might be 2.5 million inhabitants. It's something that we can say could be considered. The main investors, well, the U.S., Spain, Canada. These three countries are the countries that started, or that, like, the, let's say, the OG, the ones that have been forever, or that has the most time in the state investing. But now we can see more investments, a lot of investments from Chile and the Netherlands. In the industries, we can say that the US is investing a lot of in real estate, a lot of manufacturing. It's the main investor. Spain, there's also a lot of real estate, a lot of tourism in investment. Canada, a lot of manufacturing, automation, everything to do with assembly lines. Chile, it's investing a lot there's a very big aquacultural industry. So there's a lot of fish farming, especially shrimp and tilapia. So Chile is doing some investments in that industry. Also, the Netherlands. The Netherlands lately did a very big investment in terms of energy. Since it's in a desertic area, solar farms are starting to grow in an exponential way. Okay, I'm gonna continue to the next screen. Some of the specifically, I'm gonna talk talk a little bit more on the manufacturing industries that right now are developing in Sonora, taking aside other industries that are very big, like mining. Mining is one of the, from the last slide. From the exports, around 30% was 30% of the income was made from exporting copper and mineral concentrates. So just to give a little bit of context on the mining industry in Sonora, but I'm gonna specifically talk about manufacturing, and the manufacturing that it's taking place and that is growing nowadays in Sonora. It's more focused onto the aerospace industry, electronics and medical, and well, automotive has been in Sonora. I think it was the pioneer into manufacturing in the state. But not right now, the aerospace industry is the fastest growing industry in the state. And there are around 400 manufacturers, and there are even collaborations and venture capitals with German manufacturing companies such as Aerotech Peisenberg, and they are developing and manufacturing turbines. Well, electronics. In Sonora, there's a very big there's a very big industry related to manufacturing components for the automotive industry, especially, and well, and also the aerospace industry. And since it's also a mining state, there's a lot of cable wires and instruments. Also, the labor skill in Sonora, there's a lot of automation. There's a lot of high precision, high precisions engineers and well, engineers that know a lot of high precision in the equipment and for the industry. Also, medical, it's kind of new. I started with the COVID in the 2020, in the pandemic. There was a very big investment from BD, which decided to expand, and in less than 4 years, they developed 2 manufacturing plants, one in Hermosillo and one in Nogales, which is Nogales is the a border city with the U.S. and well, Hermosillo is the capital city that is like three hours from the border. So they decided to open 2 manufacturing facilities, and their primary hub is in Hermosillo actually, and is exporting, and created a synergy um, to attend to the other 2 manufacturing facilities, one in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, and the other one in the US, which is in Arizona specifically. And they even created around 20,000 new jobs. So it was a very interesting move over there. Well, the automotive industry, like I said, Ford Motor Company, there's where the Maverick is right now being assembled, and there's another one, and the Bronco Sport. Okay, now we're moving to Nuevo León, which is another state. Another very interesting is in Sonora that the quality of life is very high. Just to make a small parenthesis over there, the quality of life is very high. There's a very low density. Hermosillo, the capital city, has only around 1 million inhabitants. So let's say, just to give a very specific example, to go from home to work in average is around 25 minutes driving, and to go to a school in average is around 15 minutes. So the quality of life that impacts directly in the quality of life, and also it's one of the states that is producing more nowadays, more millionaires in Mexico. Next, moving now to Nuevo León, which is in the northeast part from Mexico. It has no specific border. It has no border directly with the U.S. Because they have Coahuila and Tamaulipas at the side, and they like create a small obstruction over there. But it's also very near the border. We can say uh, we can say they share borders. So there's the difference with Nuevo León. Nuevo León has 5.8 million inhabitants, and more than 80% live in the metropolitan Monterrey area. So we're saying that the metropolitan Monterrey area, it's around 4.5 million inhabitants, approximately. And it's well known internationally as for being a very big industrial hub and economic and they also, the GDP, it's one of the states that also gives more or apports more to the GDP. Very interesting project that I been following through is the Hofusan Industrial Park. This is an industrial park that it's been developing since 1 year and a half, between 2 and 1 year and a half. Right now, they already have sold around 3 square kilometers of land. It's also already being developed, and right nowadays there are already some very interesting companies manufacturing over there. It's very interesting, and how the collaboration with other countries made this specific project feasible. The investment was 1.5 billion, which entered directly into the FDI of Nuevo León, and it was a venture capital between 3 companies, 2 Chinese companies and one Mexican. It was Holly Group, Futon Group, and the Santos family, which is the Mexican company. The Santos Group is very involved into real estate, and Holly and Futon, I guess, I believe Holly Group, it's into the semiconductors, and Futon Group, it's into the optical wire. So between these three, between this team, they developed this project, which is kind of a mega project. They already developed 3 square kilometers, but there's a plan to even expand to another 2 million square kilometers or 2 million square meters or 2 square kilometers. They're hosting right now 25 companies and like Hisense and also Jinlun, which is a very important assembly and automotive industry company decided to move there. I think last month. Well, I'm not gonna get deeper into the Tesla Gigafactory that is also gonna take place, not in this industrial park, but in Nuevo León, and how Nuevo León is also it's growing exponentially. Right now, I would say the like as a very small conclusion, or I would just like said, I think everything was covered related to the Mexican geography, where it's located, how it's a good spot to invest, the competitive costs. There's very young, talented populations, the size and the strength of internal market, the macroeconomy and the political stability. Also, it's a very good point, and another advantage is that Mexico has, and that is a very good choice for our companies from any industry. Like we already talk energy, manufacturing, the industry of mining, etc. How Mexico could be a very strategic position to get there. We didn't talk about the FTAs and other advantages, but basically, I would like to conclude with that point.
Enrique, thank you very much for sharing these insights. And now we are coming to the last part of today's webinar, to the Q&A session. And let me break the ice with the first question to you, Maria. How do you assess the outcome of the elections, or the potential outcome of the elections, for the nearshoring boom? Might this affect the nearshoring boom?
Could you please repeat the question?
Yes.
Tobias?
How do you assess the outcome of the presidential elections for the nearshoring boom? Might these results affect the nearshoring boom?
Okay. Each candidate, I think it's in their proposals, plans, have to consider the importance of continuing attracting these investments. I think it's not important who is going to win. Let me rephrase. Each candidate has to consider a very part of their plans, or their talking about economic aspect, to continue supporting nearshoring, continue supporting or continue developing the infrastructure and the conditions to have to be developed to attract more nearshoring. Many companies, many industries are very interested in Mexico. So if Mexico can offer all the conditions to be safe, to be or to have all the infrastructure, electricity, water, and security to come to establish here, even more companies will be interested to establish here. So if it's important that the candidates continue with this line and continue focusing in have the more or have the perfect conditions to attract more nearshoring. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yes, you did. So in a nutshell, there won't be any changes because of the outcome of the elections for the nearshoring boom. So the nearshoring boom is going to or will continue anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps I can also share a question. Thank you, Maria and Enrique, for these nice insights. There's been a question also from the audience if the presentations can be shared afterwards. So we will make sure there will be a recording which we can share to the audience and then also the presentations. One question I would have, so Mexico has a lot of advantages, what we are seeing now, that's why we are here. And we've been also talking about the alternative to the Panama Canal and of course just a natural position between Asia and Europe also with much safer seaways. 2 points which I've recently learned about challenges about Mexico, how companies see the challenges is one, the energy, the stability of energy supply, and second, the structure as a federal construct, which sometimes makes it difficult to have, let's say, some kind of stringent rules. We have the same challenge in Germany. Of course, we're also a federation. Sometimes this makes things quite complex. Would be looking forward also to your short comment on these 2 points.
The questions for me?
Perfect. Yes, Enrique, if you want.
I think there's going to be it's going to be very interesting to see how the next political outcome what's going to be their orientations toward what type of energy are we going to start using. There were plans, for example, there's a bet if they're going to bet into green hydrogen, for example, which was a bet this president was having, but like not very not very solid. Was something that was thinking of if we're gonna start with solar farms, for example. Right now, there's there was a very big orientation from this actual administration into being a little bit more close in terms of energy, and there were not very big investments and not big there was not a big private participation into this industry because of that challenges, specifically in the mining, for example. Some investment got stopped because they couldn't guarantee or they didn't get the permits to produce their own energy. So yeah, definitely the energy is something that we're gonna see. It's a very interesting topic to see how it develops. Both candidates right now are more open to this to the private investment in terms of energy, but it's gonna be very interesting to see what type of energy are they gonna bet more. There was actually I know there's actually from a German company specifically that is very interested into hydrogen, into green hydrogen investment, specifically in the Istmo de Tehuantepec. So let's see how it goes.
Thank you. Just asking again to the audience, perhaps Manuel has to ask for the presentation. I'm not sure if you have a direct question also for now. If you want, you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, also would have another short question.
No questions for me. Thank you. This is Shahid from Dubai, UAE. So I have a question related to the tax regime. So what are the incentives for the foreign investor for the new company setup when it comes to the taxation, and also the process of setting up companies? Like, and I can give you the example here in Dubai. I mean, it takes like about 5 days to complete the company incorporation process end to end. So how's the process there in Mexico, and especially for the taxation and the customs duty? Maria, maybe you want to answer?
Okay, yes. It depends on the federal states. In Mexico City, for example, the time is shorter than in other states. I don't have exactly the number of days it takes, but if you are interested in this, I can research for this information and I will let you know. But if you are interested in some states, yes, please let me know to know exactly the number of days for this, please.
Okay, and for the taxation?
It depends on the state also. Many states have reduced their or had a lot of benefits. For example, Jalisco and Veracruz. But Enrique, if you want to complete this, please.
Yes, I'm looking for I already have a timeline of how's the process of a registration for a company. It's right now that the companies are taking around a month to get registered. Then we have to get the RFC, which is the tax ID number, and all that stuff. Depends more about if the partners are able to travel to Mexico, or if there's a process where we can do everything online, but it takes a little bit more. It's only with certain public notaries. There are a lot of different pathways that we could take, but it in average takes around a month to register a company and about 2 weeks to get the tax ID number, which is the RFC here in Mexico. In Mexico, in terms of taxing incentives, there are taxing incentives but they are very specific. For example, if you are more into manufacturing industry, a very good taxing incentive is the INMEX, for example, which lets you make temporary imports into Mexico, produce your goods, and export them without doing any permanent imports, let's say. It depends a lot in the industry that you are focusing on to give you specific advice into what taxing incentive could fit to you. In terms for creating new companies, there are no taxing incentives. Actually, the highest cost, let's say, into creating a company is the public notary fees. It's the highest cost, and there's no taxing incentive to reduce that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna show you I'm gonna try to look for the timeline that I have, maybe to send it to you if you have any more questions.
Thank you.
Great. As I see it, there are no further questions from the audience so far. So giving back to you, Tobias.
Yeah, thanks again, especially a huge thanks to our two keynote speakers and of course to the audience, to our participants. It was a pleasure, and we've already come to the end of today's webinar. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can find our data in the chat. And we will share, of course, the presentation, the recording of this webinar afterwards with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tobias.
Thank
It was
you.
a pleasure sharing this space with you.
Thank you very much, all of you. Have a nice
Mario,
day.
Maria.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.